Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. My name's John Dykes, and today I am joined by Mannens, who has travelled all the way over from Rotterdam to learn more about Celtic Football Club. Ellen, tell us your story.
Well, thanks for having me first, all the way from Rotterdam. Well, the reason I'm here is that I want to learn more about the Celtic's perspective on the final that Feyenoord played against Celtic for the European Cup in 1970. Which wasn't a game that you really want to be reminded of. But I'm working on a book since next season. It's 50 years ago that Feyenoord was the first Dutch team to win the European Cup. So to compare it to you, that this was our Lisbon in 1970. You had yours in 67. We had ours in 1970. So what I'm trying to do, me and my co-writer, are trying to find as much evidence and relics as possible to bring back that season, to bring back the feeling and the experience of that season. So that's why I'm here, to hear all the stories of people who've been to Milan to see the game and to hear what their expectations were.
I think when we think about Lisbon, we've just celebrated our 50th anniversary a few years back. The San Siro game, the 1970 game, for many years was almost airbrushed out of Celtic's history. And when you speak to the players, like you mentioned there just a moment ago, they barely wish to speak about the game.
Yeah.
There's a huge amount of regret among Celtic fans who were there and the players who were involved. But we had gone through a massive transition, Celtic. 5 years previous to that, Jock Stein had come into the club as the manager.
Yeah.
And since then, we built ourselves up to win the European Cup, and then this was our second final.
Yeah.
What was the prelude to that final for Feyenoord? Had you been building up to that? Was this just the beginning of something for Feyenoord in terms of success?
Well, it's been the glory years of Feyenoord since the 60s, because they started getting more players in, and they started building a stronger midfield. That's what they always say was the secret. They got guys like Renier Krijemaat and all the players who made a stronger midfield. That happened in the 60s. Then we started winning prizes. And then, in 69, this guy called Ernst Happel came in, and he made sure that the team was strong enough to finally get this European Cup to the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm. When we look back, this is total football, and people tell us about the fantastic Dutch teams who trailblazed through the World Cups and Ajax. Sometimes I feel that Feyenoord don't get the same recognition. Would I be safe to say that?
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Because, I only just realised that after Feyenoord won this European Cup, then Ajax won them several times. And I have to say, I'm so Feyenoord focused that I didn't even think about the Ajax thing. But now that I've come to Glasgow and you get a proper, you zoom out a little bit, and people say, this is when, what you say, Dutch football became well known. Mm-hmm. So I think Feyenoord might have started it, but what bothers me most is that if you ask people over here who was the first Dutch team to win the European Cup, they will say Ajax. And that bothers me, because it was Feyenoord, of course.
And you're here to spread the word.
Yes, I'm on a mission. Yeah.
Over the last few days, you've spoken to various Celtic figures. You're steeping yourself in Celtic history. You're speaking to historians, ex-players, you're taking the tour. What have you found? Are there any similarities between the two clubs?
Yeah, a lot. I feel at home over here, especially because Glasgow is also second city, Rotterdam is the second city. And the way you talk about your team is just the same way we talk about a team. It's a working class. So Feyenoord is a working class club, as Celtic is too. It's a people's club. The way you are humble is also a thing. I think Feyenoord is what we always say is first show it, and then maybe you can brag about it, but not too much. So you just do the job and you do it as good as you can. And I think that Celtic is the same. Just be humble, just do it. And that's what Feyenoord is too. So I think there's a lot of similarities, and I think there's also a friendship between Celtic. That's the reason why there's also friendships between the Celtic supporters and Feyenoord supporters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I'm not sure yet, I haven't found the evidence, but I think that started in 1970 because there was respect between the supporters.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you said that Celtic and Feyenoord are the teams of the classes, the working classes, and obviously our great foes are probably the antithesis of that, the complete opposite, where they're the establishment clubs, and they are quite happy to voice their opinions and shout from the rooftops how great they are.
Yeah.
And you've seen that yourself coming over to Glasgow and seeing the kind of Celtic-minded people that you've met.
Yeah.
When we also look at that final, one of the big things for me was that Wim Jansen played for the Feyenoord team, played for a great Dutch team, and many, many years later he played a big part in the Celtic history.
Yeah.
So at this moment in time, where is Wim Jansen? Is he still involved with Feyenoord?
Well, no, he's not involved as in that he's still working for Feyenoord, but he comes in every now and then just to drink a cup of tea with former Spongeman, with Gerard Meijer. So first I have to say I was happy to find out that Wim Jansen made up a little bit for that lost final. So when he came back, he made up a little bit for 1970. So I felt a bit more safe to come here and talk about that final. But Wim Jansen is not, for as far as I know, not active in football anymore. But I walked into him the other day when I was at the stadium, and our former Spongeman he has a little museum in the stadium, and I was invited in there by another former player, and there he just was sitting there drinking his tea, catching up with his former Spongeman. So he's still got a big Feyenoord heart, I think.
Brilliant. We do forgive him, by the way.
We do.
Because obviously he won the league, but he brought Henrik Larsson over,
Also,
which is another good link to Feyenoord. What's your memories, or what kind of legacy did Henrik leave at Feyenoord?
I think, well, what I remember of him is that he was one happy player, that he was just a positive vibe in the team. And I have to say, by that time I just started going to the Feyenoord games and just started being interested in Feyenoord. And I was always distracted. I couldn't watch the field too long because I always was distracted by what was happening in the stadium. So I can't tell you if he was a tactically well player. But he was, I don't think there's many people who be negative about him. So yeah, I think you were lucky to have him after he left Feyenoord.
Yeah, I think we got probably him at the peak of his powers when he came to Celtic. After a few seasons, he developed into a real superstar for Celtic, and it was a wrench for him to leave. But obviously, he went on to bigger things by winning the Champions League.
Yes.
When we are talking about Champions League, I still call it European Cup.
Yeah.
We were the first British club. Feyenoord were the first Dutch club.
Yes.
Let's go back to that game for a moment. You'll be meeting some of the Celtic players who were involved. It's a huge regret for everybody that was involved, every fan that was at the game, that Celtic didn't win. But every player I've spoken to, Ellen, they always say, let's forget about the excuses. Feyenoord were the better team on the day. Yeah. What's the plans to celebrate the 50th anniversary when it comes around?
Well, that's a good question, because my co-writer is going to talk to some people at Feyenoord this week, so we're not sure yet what they're going to do, or whether they have any plans yet. So, but we've got plans, because we just thought we need to do something about this, because it's been so important for the identity of Feyenoord, for the fact that we were the first to win this important prize. It just gives us a proud feeling. So me and my co-writer just thought we need to start doing this, and I don't know what Feyenoord is going to do.
Right.
No.
So you could maybe suggest that they bring Celtic over and we can maybe play a game.
That would be so cool. I've been talking to Pat Woods these days. You know him, I think. And he said the same. He said you should just have a replay or whatever. It would be really cool.
That would be excellent to go over and celebrate a great achievement.
I want to have a reunion with the players. And
that would be great. Would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, when we look at the team, Davy Hay played for Celtic. He played number 2 right back. Him and Wim Jansen became a management team much later on in the 1997-98 season. And David told me that he never ever once spoke to Wim Jansen about the 70 Cup final. It was so hard for them to accept. And at that time, Celtic had commercial deals set up And part of that was that they were to go into a Glasgow recording studio and record a victory song. And as far as I know, they recorded a victory song.
Yeah.
So a wee bit presumptuous, but obviously it was never released.
I want to find that one.
You should. It'll be somewhere in the archives.
Yeah.
When we talk about the Celtic team of that era, I keep banging on about Celtic becoming a European superpower.
Mm-hmm.
We had, within 12 seasons, reached at least the quarterfinals of a European competition 9 times.
Yeah.
And in between that was the lost final. So you probably got us at our best, and you toppled us. After that, there's a Celtic teddy bear that I believe is now in Rotterdam.
It's even in the Feyenoord Museum.
It's in the museum.
Yes,
Could you tell us, where did that come from? What's the origins of that?
The story is that the daughter of one of the managers from Feyenoord was given the teddy bear, by one of the supporters, because he said, well, it didn't bring us much luck, so here you go. So she brought it back, and it was there all the time because we put it in the cup. Mm-hmm. So when there was this... when the players got to the town hall, so the fans could cheer at them, mm-hmm. and then the cup was presented, and the teddy bear was in there, and now it's in the museum. So we just keeping it as our lucky charm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, Celtic State of Mind was set up to try and cover the culture of the club and of the fan base. Yeah. There's some fantastic Celtic podcasts out there covering the topical issues, the day-to-day issues, previews and reviews of games, etc. So we tried to dig a wee bit deeper into what makes a Celtic supporter attracted to the club. So we're right into fan culture, and you're the same at Feyenoord. Could you tell us a wee bit about your background with regards to the magazine you work for and how you're involved with the fan movement?
I can even go one step back, because my when I really got into the Feyenoord thing and call it a Feyenoord state of mind maybe, mm-hmm. It was in 2012 when we had this player called Graziano Pella, who was a handsome Italian guy, and Feyenoord thought, hey, he's good looking, so we might attract more female supporters to the stadium. So they had this...
was he better looking than Henrik Larsson? Surely not.
No, he wasn't.
Thanks for that.
Good question. So Feyenoord thought, okay, we're going to do this ladies' night, and then we're going to have a little bit of a advertisement, and then we're going to pretend like Graziano Pella is going to welcome the ladies into the stadium and all that. And there were, in this movie, there were girls, high heels, short skirts, and it was a November game, a November Saturday night game. And they pretended that we would come there in our short skirts or whatever. So it was all bullshit. I thought, we don't come for one player. We just come for the team. We just want to see them play their asses off. So then I decided to start my own website. It's called 365 Female Feyenoord Supporters. Well, that's translated. Of course, it's in Dutch. And then I started interviewing female supporters on the reason why they were going to the stadium, which is not because of one handsome player. So that's when I started getting more and more involved into supporters and why we support the team. And just half a year after that, I joined the Hand in Hand. That's the fan magazine. That's the supporters magazine, which we make for the Supporters Association. So it's the official Supporters Association. They have got a lot of members and they've got their own magazine, and I'm writing for them. And just last season, I've been writing a series of stories about the players' scrapbooks, because it was the 110th anniversary of Feyenoord, because we were founded in 1908, so a little bit later than you were. And I thought, if I go into these players' scrapbooks, I might find out more about Feyenoord's history, but from the players' perspectives and the things we don't know yet. And then I realized that there's so many hidden treasures, because what they said, I should have my scrapbooks somewhere in the attic or wherever. And I found so many good things. Like there was this letter that the players received in the beginning of season from 1969, which said, you're supposed to be there and there, this and this time to meet your new trainer, and his name is Ernst Happel, and everyone's like, oh, okay, we'll see. Well, now we know, everyone knows who Ernst Happel is, but by then you didn't. So that's all these little treasures that are hidden in in the houses of these former players.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I started thinking, like, shit, we've got to make sure that that these don't get thrown away, because these guys are getting older and older. You don't know if their children see how much these scrapbooks and all the other stuff is worth. So that's when I thought, we need to make a book on this. And then I realized, wait a minute, next season it's 50 years ago that we won the cup.
Yeah.
And then my co-writer was walking around with the same idea, because he had been collecting all stuff that supporters had kept from that year, from that season. So 1 and 1 is 2, and now we're just working on the book.
When are you expecting to finish the book?
Well, the 6th of May it has to be, because that's when the final was.
Yeah.
So next year, 6th of May, it should be finished, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a real labour of love, but I think when you started speaking about the scrapbooks, I've been in a similar situation when you're in a former player's house or a fan's house and they start digging out relics that, you know,
So much stuff.
get you excited, but, you know, they're used to it, so they don't care so much.
Yeah.
But the scrapbooks are a great way of unearthing some information that perhaps wasn't in the press at the time,
Yeah.
and isn't that greatly known. And I think one of the things we were speaking about before is there may well be colour footage of the 1970 final. And I know how people's memories and minds play tricks on them.
Yeah.
But a friend of mine's father was involved in a camera crew who went over from Scotland to film the game in Italy, and he recalls watching the footage in colour. So we're going to try and do some digging and some investigation for you to see if we can dig that out, and
fabulous.
hopefully you can show it on your 50th anniversary.
That would be so cool. You should feel my heart now, like, oh, if that exists?
I know.
I think we can get a cinema night that people will come to the cinema to see it in colour. Come on.
I know. Before now, the footage has never been seen, really.
Yeah.
I think they'll be in an archive somewhere, but as I say, a friend of mine may well have that in a dusty box in an attic somewhere, so let's have a look and see if it's there.
Cool. Yeah.
Going back to the game itself, I've done some research on the game for one of my books, and there was a great sense of regret, obviously, from the players. When you look at the run that Celtic had leading up to that game, where we defeated Benfica, Fiorentina, Leeds United,
Yeah.
in many ways it was a much more difficult run
Yeah.
than the 1967
Yeah.
campaign. But I felt that Celtic's final was almost the semi-final. It was the final before the big game.
Leeds.
There was talk of us underestimating Feyenoord, but obviously Feyenoord came out all guns blazing and, you know, won that game fair and square. What was the Feyenoord run to that game? Was it as difficult as the Celtic run?
Well, we beat Milan, who was the champion at that time. So I think we started with Reykjavik, which was a fun game. 12-2 it was the first one, and the second one we were just a bit more quiet, just to give them a fun game too, maybe. And then there was Milan, yeah. And then, well, the first one we didn't win, but then we did. And, well, you could have said that was our final.
Yeah.
But we kept on playing. So.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Helenio Herrera, who was the Inter Milan manager that Jock Stein defeated in '67, after the Leeds United game, warned Stein via the press to look out for Feyenoord, because he fancied them quite strongly to give Celtic a game. So, you know, I think the best team won on the day, and all the excuses that have been made since then are just that. Although it did start the real breakup of the Lisbon Lions, and this new crop of players started coming through for Celtic. And what happened was one of the players that came through shortly thereafter was Kenny Dalglish. They were part of the Quality Street gang. But by the time Dalglish came to fruition, he realised that Celtic weren't going to win the European Cup again, coming into the late 70s. And he went to English football. You know, in 77 he signed for Liverpool, 78 he won the European Cup. And so it was proven. Another Dutch player done exactly the same, Virgil van Dijk, in more recent times. He left, obviously, not just for the money, but to further his career. Yeah. But we're sitting here, and we're fans of very proud football clubs with great European pedigree. But we're almost on the outside looking in now when we look at the Champions League. Yeah. You know, the final just recently, it wasn't a great game to watch, but there's two teams who didn't win their league. Yeah. We're talking about runs to the 1970 final where you had to beat the champions of the respective countries.
It were the best teams in Europe at that moment, yeah.
So how do you feel? I know that Ajax done particularly well this season. It's bittersweet for Celtic fans because we don't have a great relationship with their fans. But as a team like Feyenoord, a team like Celtic, what do you see the future holding for for clubs like us? Will we ever be at the table of the Champions League?
I'm afraid not, because at the moment I think that modern football spoiled it all. It's just there's in every country you have this one team who wins everything, so who has the most money, so who is way ahead of the others. So there's no more fun. So I think that what Celtic and Feyenoord should do is just focus on making a strong team as strong as possible, and don't compare themselves with Barcelona or whatever. Just make sure that they've got a strong team, the best team they can build, and don't focus on in 67 for you and in 70 we won that cup, so we should do it again.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should just focus on doing the best we can at this moment, because modern football is just completely spoiled. It's just not what it used to be anymore.
No, it's kind of tore the soul out of the European Cup for me.
Yeah.
And I think Celtic as a fan base, because of our heritage in Europe, still wish to be involved in that.
Yeah.
But now it's become obviously just for the bank balance rather than actually getting anywhere near winning it.
Yeah.
Ajax were a bit of an anomaly this season. How did that happen? What has been happening in Amsterdam to create the run that they enjoyed this season?
This is not my favourite subject, of
No.
course. And I'm not really a football analytic, but okay, so this is just what I think what they've done really well is that they've been working on this for years. So they made sure they got their players ready for it, and they didn't think, okay, we have to win it right now, but they just took their time to improve, and they took the young players, and I think they just had a dream and they're just working on it, just stubborn, like, okay, we want to do something great, which means we have to work on it for a long time, which means we don't win any prizes in between, and then see, that's where it gets you.
Yeah. And I always look at Dutch football as being grassroots, producing your own players, and often building great teams, but their teams seem to be split up very quickly because the vultures of the richer leagues will come along and buy all your best players. Yeah,
true. And now they've got enough money so they can buy a whole new team again. So that's what new football is like. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
But I'm so hoping for Feyenoord to finally see that they should use their own talents, because there's so many talented guys right now walking around who are willing to play for the first team of Feyenoord, and who are really talented. And you should just make sure that they stay and that they feel connected to the club, and they just want to do everything. That's what you need, because that's what the guys from 1970 also said. They said Feyenoord will never be able to do this again. So the old guys say that because they say we stayed together for years. Some of them have been playing together for 8-10 years.
Yeah.
So they were a real team. But now people leave after 2 or 3 years because they think they can make money somewhere else. Yeah.
As much as I criticise the Champions League and English football particularly being ruined by the greed, there was a brilliant interview with Jurgen Klopp where he was speaking about what Liverpool gives the fans. He says,
He understands that.
He says, we share this experience. It's all about emotion, it's about enjoyment, it's about experiences and memories, and he says you get that mainly through success.
Cool.
You see what that brings to you as a community when you're in we've just won the treble, and I was sitting beside John McLaughlin, who you've been emailing, and another guy to my left who's 75 years of age, and then Terry Dick, whose dad wrote the Celtic song, which is played before every single game. So I'm steeped in this history around about me, and the three of them were almost in tears when we won that game, and I was thinking, what other aspect of your life gives you such a range of emotions, be it heartache, disappointment? It's a unique thing,
and that's what I want to find out. The main reason is because it's part of your identity. It's you. You're just one with the team, so when they win, you win. That's just...
And we talk about it as Celtic fans, but you can't overlook the fact that that's what every fan goes through with a club.
Yeah, I'm always wondering if they feel the same. So what I'm wondering, does someone who supports Ajax feel the same as I'm feeling? I just can't imagine, but...
I think that this is probably my issue with the new breed of modern football fans, because it isn't the emotional attachment. It's the fact that it's now about success, it's about money, it's a tourist industry.
Yeah,
and
here in England it's horrible,
people that support more than one team. And
Yeah.
it's a different
I
world.
just don't get it.
It's a different world. Now.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, I've seen the caps, half Liverpool, half Spurs, and I just thought I would never allow that. It's disgraceful. It's a desecration. I would not allow it.
I never buy these just so when you go to an away game or something, when we played Rome, for example, and then people buy this scarf where you have them half-half.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine that you buy it and just store it at home, but not wearing it.
I know.
Because then you would be walking around with half something that's not your team. I just don't get it.
I know. I couldn't do it. We've been speaking about fan culture.
Yeah.
And obviously our proud European heritage, but it's changed so much in the modern day. But there was one great interview given by Jurgen Klopp, either leading up or after the European Cup win recently, where he was speaking about the range of emotions that they share with the fans. Cool. It sounded as though he got it. He gets what we're all about.
Which is quite special.
Yeah, and why you've got a Feyenoord state of mind and I've got a Celtic state of mind.
Yeah.
How do you think that's changed in the modern day with the greed and the money and the Champions League and the corruption of FIFA? And how's it changed now with people going to the games these days?
Well, that changed. People don't go to the games anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So what you see now is that, well, I've been talking to Pat Woods, but we've got, at Feyenoord, we've got our own Pat Woods kind of people, and they love their club to bits, but they won't go to the stadium anymore because they're fed up with the modern football and all the rules, and it's not their team anymore. But the feeling for the club, for Feyenoord, stays the same.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to go to the stadium to still love your club.
Yeah. Do you think there's been a lot of emotion lost in terms of when I was introduced to Celtic, it was passed down from generation to generation. It wasn't a fashion accessory to go and watch Celtic, but it's become a fashion accessory to go and watch these English Premier League clubs, hasn't it?
Yeah, but it's worse over here, I think, for you, because I hope we're not going to do what English and Scottish football is up to. Because in the Netherlands, I still tend to think that people are there for the club and they're still emotionally involved. Mm-hmm. We're not like the Barcelona yet. But what you see is happening is that more and more people in the Netherlands start supporting, let's say, Liverpool or Barcelona or whatever. And I just don't get it, because I don't get it how you get connected to these teams when they're so far away, when there's a beautiful football team in your own town where you can go to, you can buy tickets and just see the players play. I just don't get it why they choose, why they don't feel the connection to the team that is closest to them. I'm not sure why that is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when we look at Feyenoord, and I've learned a lot speaking to you about the kind of roots of the club and the fan movement, there are so many similarities between Feyenoord and the core of what Celtic is. Now, Celtic has turned into a massive corporate organisation, and part of that is the fact that I think previously we were a great football team, but we weren't run properly as a club or as a business, if you like, and we'll never allow that to happen again. But it can go so far that there's a lack of engagement, if you like. There's a disconnect between the club and the fans. Is that something that at the moment Feyenoord haven't gone down that road? So are you guys still quite close to the club? Yeah,
but I have to say this is our nightmare, what you're telling me, because what's happening right now, it's been happening for 10 years. We've been talking about building a new stadium for Feyenoord, and it still hasn't happened because it's a lot of money involved, way too much money. And what you see is there's a lot of people who don't like the plan for the new stadium that's there right now, because it's all based on becoming a club like Barcelona or whatever, who attracts more people who just come there for fun, just as a day trip or something, and who aren't connected to the club anymore. So this is what we're really scared of. So this whole stadium thing is really like a dark cloud above the club right now.
Would it still be in Rotterdam?
It will actually be just close to where the stadium is right now. So the plan is, I can imagine that after the stadium was built in 1937, so I can imagine that you want to make it more modern or something. And the plan is quite okay. They want to build it at the riverside. Well, that's quite cool. But they forget about football culture. They just want to turn it into Well, the next thing, so you can pick what are we going to do tonight. Are we going to go to a musical or are we going to go to the Feyenoord Stadium? Like, it's becoming more entertainment or something. And it's not, to us, it's a matter of life and death. But
exactly,
they just want to sell tickets as if it's just another show or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sell the seat and then spend as much money while you're in the stadium.
That's it.
Like a tourist attraction.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
But I think you're killing your club if you do that, because the real supporters, you see, what I call real supporters are the ones that really feel the connection, that really feel the pain when you lose a game. That's, I think, is real supporters. Mm-hmm. If they stop going to the game, you don't have the same atmosphere in your stadium anymore. So it's no use for these people who want to see a show to go to the stadium. So I think you should always make sure that the supporters who are there for who make sure that there's the right atmosphere, you should always make sure that they keep coming, because that's the core of your club. That's why you exist, I think.
It's the heartbeat of your club.
Yeah, well said, yeah.
Thank you very much for appearing on Celtic State of Mind. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. A Celtic State of Mind can be found at axom.net. We're sponsored by Fansbet, the betting company by fans for fans.